Call a meeting to order. Good morning, everybody. We need a motion and second to grant a leave of absence to Commissioner Levy, who is out of town.
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? That motion carries. Thank you. Also need a motion and second for approval of the minutes of the meeting of November 8th, 2017.
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? So that motion carries as well. Thank you. And the next item is to get Curtis's Executive Director's report.
Thank you, Commissioner Carter, and Commissioners, good morning, welcome. It's a beautiful day, and so we've closed the shades. Great to have you all here again. First, I'd like to again recognize our safety champions up here on the board. You'll see that they're from all parts of the port. We're really continuing our focus, especially as we enter the darker and colder months on safety, in particular our folks working outside. So thanks to the whole port team for continuing that focus. Stan, I wonder if you do the safety moment for us this morning.
Yeah, so today I thought I would talk about being safe during severe winter weather events. Last year we had several days and weeks of winter weather, and the port had to make some adjustments to respond to those events, both from a safety and an operational perspective. You know, driving in the winter means changing the way you drive, and snow, sleet, and ice, as we know, leads to hazardous conditions here in our area. And so the port is asking everyone to take some simple but key steps to ensuring we and our families remain safe this winter. First of all, be prepared. Keep connected and informed of severe weather events. You know, we all have our phones now, so look at your weather app before you head out in the morning. Winterize your vehicle and keep the gas tank full. And make sure you check your tires. It's a good time to check your tires to make sure that they're in good order and have good tread depth. Carry traction devices in your car at all times during the winter. You never know what you may run into, and you may need them. And then put together a safety supply kit in your vehicle. And I know I've talked about that on numerous occasions, but for the winter time, you might think about throwing a stocking cap in there. You might think about putting some warm gloves in there. You never know when you might get stranded and you may have to walk long distances. Second, be ready every day. Wear appropriate winter clothing for the type of conditions, weather conditions. Wear proper footwear, boots that have good grip and tread. And when away from home, such as work, know your options. Check with your manager ahead of time to make different arrangements if you can't get to work. And also talk with your family members so that you have plans in case of an emergency. And then plan always for other options if conditions change. And then I think it's always handy if you have a lot of foot traffic around your home that you go out and buy some ice melt ahead of time, because you never know when you may need it. Or have mats that you can put down in high traffic foot areas. And then third, things to avoid. Never run a vehicle in an enclosed area like your garage. It's not very wise. And then avoid unnecessary travel. If you don't have to go out, don't go out and stay home. And so the port's asking for everyone to be cautious this winter and to be safe and be prepared. And then I guess lastly, I'd just say that seeing how it's the holiday season, I wish us all a safe and happy holiday season.
Great, thank you, Stan.
Yep.
I know my kids are expecting about a foot of snow because we had it last year, and at 5 and 6 years old, that's how it works. It must be coming. Thank you for the message. Commissioners, as I think you probably have heard by now, big news this month is really the approval from the airlines of our T-Core project. Kudos to Vince Granato and his team, Chris Zarnicki, and the others who were negotiating the project with the airlines. It will be the largest construction project in our history and also the largest single construction project in Oregon's public history. So really remarkable achievement. It will update and modernize the terminal. We'll be dealing with the seismic issues in the new portion of the terminal, and it will really help us get to the growth that we're projecting inside the terminal over the next 30 years. So you'll hear a bit more about that on the agenda item this morning. Second, other good news, we did start, since the last commission meeting, the Aeromexico direct service to Mexico City. We also celebrated last week with tamales and tacos, and there was a bit of mezcal involved, but since I'm in my lifetime ban on tequila, I did not have any of that. But I do want to thank a couple commissioners who came out and celebrated with us. It's really a great opportunity for PDX. It will open up through the Aeromexico connections to the rest of Latin America, really a whole new set of markets for us, and it's pretty exciting. Speaking of tamales, the Port, in partnership with Centro Cultural de Washington County, hosted Tamale Night on December 8th, really as part of our new and sort of experimental outreach. This was relative to our Hillsborough master planning process. We're about halfway through that process. I was out in Hillsborough yesterday, and the community actually was really excited about the opportunity to come and sit down and talk about Hillsborough Airport with food and beverage. So it worked really well. I think we'll be trying more of that as we do more of these public processes. But the Hillsborough master planning process is really now getting into the questions of what that will look like for the community and the concerns out there around air pollution, noise pollution, business opportunities around both the aviation and the non-aviation sides of that business. I did have the honor this last week of testifying at Portland City Council on behalf of congestion pricing in the region. As I think I've mentioned before, I was tasked by the legislature to sit on the work group developing the recommendation for the Oregon Transportation Commission around congestion pricing. We at the Port think that that's a real important part of a solution to get people off the roads at peak hours. So you can, as Bruce says, open up your engines and let them roar, but if you're doing that in the peak hours, you're going to pay for it. And finally, the fun news of the day is that we just started in the last hour. The new overhead speaker announcement inside PDX is no longer my voice. It's Damian Lillard of the Portland Trailblazers welcoming folks to Rip City. He's done a terrific job. We actually asked him if he'd be interested in cutting one, and he did 9 versions. He was so excited about it. So it's really great. If you're over there, listen for it. I'm interested to hear the Blazer music as well and see how many people are confused about that in the terminal. So, Mr. President, that it summarizes my remarks for the day.
Thank you for that. Thanks, Stan, for the safety comments. Is there a motion and second to approve the Executive Director's report?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. And this is now our public comment period, and there's one person so far that's signed up to speak, and I think I'm going to correctly state the name here, hopefully. Ranfis Villatoro. Good morning. Come on up, and we'll put you right here in this desk. And if you would just tell us who you are and any representation that you have. And I know you want to talk about the Portland Harbor community, so have at it.
Great. Thank you.
Thank you for being here.
Yeah, thank you, Board of Commissioners. My name is Ranfis Giannatino Villatoro. I'm today here representing the Portland Harbor Community Coalition, which is a coalition of community groups that have been historically impacted by the impacts of the Superfund site. It's a coalition between community color organizations, labor, as well as small business groups. And environmental groups, and folks from the North Portland neighborhood. And I apologize, my voice is a little catching a cold, I think. I'm here to testify in support of the Superfund site. I imagine, recently the EPA has recently designated the Portland Harbor Superfund site as an immediate priority for cleanup. And I imagine the past leaders, historical leaders before me have raised concerns both on the Superfund site, but as well as ensuring that the Superfund site has local jobs, access to local jobs and pathway to union jobs. And here today I'm just to testify and support that the Port considers, as we get closer and closer to determining the Port's responsibility on the Portland Harbor cleanup, to consider high road standards on the cleanup. And what do I mean by high road standards? Considering diverse hiring, diverse contracting, considering local hire where permissible, consider high roads contracting, so rewarding contractors who have a good track record of being a model employer who invests in training and good benefits and wages. I'm talking about also, considering a pathway to living wage jobs or union wage jobs, a set aside for funding for workforce development or training. So for apprenticeship and pre-apprenticeship programs from contingency funds, ensuring that as we move forward towards cleanup, that we have open and transparent data and a robust community oversight and compliance. And I think some great models that we've seen that are really effective are some through project labor agreements or community benefit agreements. I know the port has its own existing agreements, but that has a sort of a labor management or community oversight mechanism. I don't want to get too caught up in the weeds details here, but I think the port can be a leader in setting these standards. One of the early things I think the port can do to be a leader is, fund a scope of work to conduct early job forecasting for future remedial action, partner with Portland Harbor Community Coalition and community allies to try to leverage funds from the EPA around workforce development training. So they have workforce development grants, and would love to work with port staff and as well as other stakeholders to ensure that we get that funding. The port can pass a resolution to agree to high roads community standards, and we can go into further detail in future meetings what that could entail. Ensure a future cleanup has whether a project labor agreement, a community benefits agreement, or just a high road standards agreement, whatever we can determine to define that. But ultimately, I think what we're hoping for is multiple stakeholders from labor, community groups, environmental groups, as well as minority contracting associations to help develop good agreements around the harbor to ensure that the cleanup is equitable, that we're investing in training and ensuring that not just the one-off on this project, but that it could benefit the port in future projects by ensuring that we have a highly skilled workforce as well as developing the capacity for contractors to work on future projects. And we're at a critical moment at this period where we have a shortage of both labor, a skilled labor force, as well as a contracting force. And I think the port can be a leader on this early on. And I think just to conclude, I think I just want to commend, the port for being a leader continually. I know port staff has continually been working on this and been an important stakeholder. And I just want to thank Curtis as well as Ann for taking the time to meet with community stakeholders to hear our concerns, as well as hopefully set a strong vision. And I think we ultimately want to get other stakeholders in the Portland Harbor Superfund site to also set high road standards for not just the benefit of our community, but for all community. Thank you very much.
Before you take off, maybe people have a question or comment. And if not, I would certainly like to say thank you for being here. I think for this to be successful, both to have the cleanup success and the process in the cleanup successful, that your engagement is really important. And I know you've been working with the staff, so keep that up. I think good ideas come from continuous engagement and thoughtful people. So thanks for being here in your presentation. Anything else?
Yeah, I too want to thank you for coming forward and working with port staff and Curtis. I think as a port, anything we do should be high road, should be how are we creating good jobs, how are we getting people into the pipeline to improve their lives. And every time we have an opportunity, whether it is building parking structures or cleaning up the river, we really need to take a strategic look at that and see how we can implement those types of standards. Thanks.
So thank you. I'm sure we'll see you again.
Great. Thank you very much.
Stephanie Taylor. Good morning.
Good morning, Chair, Commissioners. My name is Stephanie Taylor, and I'm the field organizer for the Audubon Society of Portland. I'm here representing our 25,000 members and supporters statewide. And I'd like to start by mentioning that the Audubon Society of Portland is a member of the Portland Harbor Community Coalition, and we generally support the points made on behalf of the PHCC. Next, I want to express our appreciation that the Port has been willing to go on record supporting continuing forward with the record of decision. Moving forward into implementation is critical. Lastly, I'd like to emphasize that it is important that the Port of Portland be as transparent and inclusive as possible as it moves forward with negotiations with the EPA. It is particularly important that the Port, as a public agency, set highest possible standards for transparency. Thank you for your time today.
Thank you. Any questions or comments? Again, thank you for being here.
Sure.
And I'm sure we'll continue to see you off and on as this program progresses, and encourage you to stay in touch with the staff who will be day to day on this project.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Cassie Cohen. Good morning.
Good morning.
You just tell us
Yes.
who you represent. And
Good morning, Chair and Commissioners. My name is Cassie Cohen. I'm the coordinator of Portland Harbor Community Coalition, and I appreciate Rand Feast getting up here and our folks, our partners from Audubon already. So I think I'll just reiterate. I'll tell you a little bit about my personal story real quick, why I care about this issue of Superfund. I was born at Best Kaiser Hospital, a stone's throw away from the river. My mother passed away when I was 8 in the same hospital there. My father, my father taught me how to fish, but not in the Willamette River. And when I was pregnant with my daughter, who's now 2.5 years old, had I eaten a single resident fish from the Portland Harbor, she would have had long-lasting developmental delays or learning disabilities. So this is a big concern for all communities, and we appreciate that it's a top priority for the Port to do your part to clean up, to move forward on the cleanup of the Superfund site. We look forward to continuing to work with the staff and hopefully you as well to find a path forward that is innovative, that seeks to right wrongs, historical disparities for especially communities most impacted by the Portland Harbor, and also to find creative ways to solve this problem and to do it in a way that's not necessarily only led by sort of the legal concerns and the liabilities, but to think about how can we do this in a way that's innovative and that we can be proud of in this city. And so we hope to write those community benefits in partnership with you and see what that can look like, even in the early phases, even in this sampling of the contaminants, the baseline sampling that will happen in the first phase, and then moving forward with each phase. So thank you again for listening.
Thank you for being here. And Donovan Smith is the next person. Good morning.
Good morning. Good morning, Chair and Commissioners. My name is Donovan Smith with Portland Harbor Community Coalition. I just want to say, as a fourth-generation Oregonian, every bit of tree and every bit of water that flows through this land is important to me on a particular level. And as I've come into knowledge more about how unhealthy our Willamette River is, it's been particularly hurtful to learn how we've landed here. But what's exciting is the possibilities of what we can do to right what's been wronged. This river belongs to all of us, and there's things that we can do to make sure that as we're writing that we can right the people who have been wronged as well. And so as we're strategizing with the port in the cleanup, we'd like to see jobs created with communities who have been wronged. We'd like to have dialogues that have been left to the wind in the past continue to be fortified and continue to keep those doors open. And we'd like to see community benefits that we can truly be proud of when we look back and have cleaned our river. So that's what I have to say. Thank you.
Thank you again for those comments, and I think you've demonstrated, as the other spokespeople have, that we all have an interest in seeing this as a benefit in the process to the communities and a clean river in the end. So thanks, and hopefully we will see you again as well.
No,
Thank
you.
And Keith, you've got the first agenda item.
Good morning.
Good morning.
This agenda item would authorize the sale of roughly 7.64 acres of property at Gresham Vista Business Park to Elephant 6 Technologies. This is a United Kingdom company. This would be foreign direct investment here in our community. We are very excited about having an advanced manufacturing user at Gresham Vista Business Park. Doug will describe the agenda item in a little more detail. I did want to introduce from Element 6 is Adam O'Grady, the head of operations for Element 6. Thanks, Adam, for being here. I also want to acknowledge our great partnership with the City of Gresham. Shannon Stady is here, who is the Director of Economic Development. Thanks, Shannon. This is an interesting project from our standpoint. This is an advanced manufacturing operation. It will provide middle wage and above jobs. This is really in line with what we were hoping from an economic development standpoint when we acquired Gresham Vista in the first place. We're delighted to work with this company. They have a great track record of partnering with the community, engaging with the community. We see great synergy with Mount Hood Community College in training and hiring locally. And so we're very delighted to bring this item to you. And with that, I'm going to go ahead and have Doug provide the details.
Very good. Thank you, Keith. It's not working. Next slide, please. Thank you, Keith. Chair Carter, commissioners, good morning, and thank you. My name is Doug Smith. I'm responsible for international business development within our industrial properties group. I'm pleased to present additional detail this morning on the proposed sale of Gresham Vista Lot 7, which is outlined in red. It's on the southern boundary of the Gresham Vista Business Park. It's a parcel of 7.64 acres. As you recall, the port in 2011 purchased the Gresham Vista Business Park, a 222-acre parcel from LSI Logic. LSI had plans to place 4 semiconductor fabs at that location. When their plans changed, working with the city of Gresham, the port acquired that property. On Semiconductor continues to operate the initial facility at the center of the business park. So we've worked very closely with the city to create a park that fulfills the economic development goals of the city, attracting high-quality companies and jobs in the traded sector. We are especially pleased this morning to welcome Element 6 Technologies to Gresham and to East County. Element 6 traces its roots back to 1946 and has always been at the forefront in the development of industrial applications of diamond. It serves as the Advanced Technology and Innovation Center of the De Beers Group and is the global leader in its field. The board and investment committee of both the De Beers Group and its parent, Anglo American, have both approved this project at the Gresham site. The company is forecasting initial employment of 60 jobs at a range of skill levels. Wages and benefits exceed the standards set by Gresham's enterprise zone and will be competitive with other high technology companies in the region. As Keith said, this is exactly the kind of global advanced technology company that was envisioned to build out the Gresham Vista Business Park. One of the aspects of Element 6 that we've been most pleased about is its focus on corporate responsibility. The company has in place a corporate code of conduct that is followed at each of its facilities globally, and also required of its suppliers and vendors at each of its locations. They value diversity and inclusion among their workforce, as well as encourage a positive contribution to the prosperity of the broader community. We've been, as Keith said, we've been intentional about introducing them not only to our leadership, but also engaging with our own equity lead and procurement lead, Steve Nakana and Kimberly Mitchell-Phillips. Together with the City of Gresham, we've introduced them to Mount Hood Community College. We fully anticipate that they will form a strong partnership both on training as well as hiring of a workforce at its local facility. The selection of Gresham was a competitive process across multiple states. They evaluated multiple locations in North America. We appreciate the strong partnership with our local partner, Greater Portland, Inc., which led the regional recruitment together with the city, Portland General Electric, and Business Oregon. One of the highlights during recruitment was to have been able to announce the launch of direct service to London's Heathrow, which will most definitely be a well-worn route for Adam and his colleagues from their facilities in Ascot, just outside of London. The business terms of the transaction are outlined on the slide for you. Again, it's a 7.64 acre site that would be sold for $7 per square foot. The revenue to the port would be $2,329,586. As noted in your materials, one of the contingencies of sale is the successful change in the zoning of the property from corridor mixed use to general industrial. The City of Gresham is the applicant and has initiated that process. Their City Planning Commission met 2 nights ago and unanimously approved the Planning Commission or the Planning Department's recommendation to approve that zone change. The City Council will review this in 3 weeks on January 2nd, 2018. With your approval of the land transaction today and City Council's approval of the rezone, we anticipate the company would be in for permit early next year with construction commencing in mid-2018. And that concludes my presentation. We submit for your approval the sale of Gresham Vista Lot 7 to Element 6 Technologies Oregon Corporation. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Doug. Questions or comments?
Yeah, one of each. You actually answered one of my questions, but I want to commend you in working with the staff here with looking at career pathways and developing skill sets that will set up a pipeline for employment. Gresham is a rapidly diversifying community, and I think this will be a wonderful opportunity. Just from a data point, what was the acquisition cost of this site?
$26 million in 2011 for the
Okay.
220 acres. This is
A subset.
6.7 acres of that 220 acres.
All right, and is there an operational offsite in terms of the expense that the port will not be supporting for this area?
Yeah, you know, the way that we, from an operational standpoint, the way that we manage the site, because this isn't a large footprint within the overall 220 acres, our normal marketing activities, which is most of our operating costs, we don't have a lot of maintenance costs with regard to Gresham Vista. It won't offset a lot of that normal marketing spend that we have for the rest of the sites. But you can see we're starting to move towards selling all of the available properties, but the remaining properties will still have our folks, you know, working to market those sites.
Okay, thank you.
There is a commensurate, right? We have an allocation. I'm looking to Cindy, the 26 million divided by 220 acres. There's coming off the book would be a cost of property of just under $1 million, I think.
Yeah, from an accounting
Right.
standpoint.
Thank you.
I have one quick question. Understanding that this is a smaller lot within the bigger property and that it's frontage and all of that is different, how does the price compare to the other lots that we've sold here?
This would be the highest revenue of industrial property that the port will have sold, not only in this park, but other parks of the port.
Okay, thank you.
Other questions or comments? Is there a motion and second to approve the recommendation?
So move.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Well, that recommendation carries, and thank you for the presentation and the work behind all this to both of you and the others on the team. This continues to be a positive situation at Gresham Vista, and the work you've done with the local authorities as well, but at the city to make this a positive for everybody concerned. So thanks.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you, Commissioners.
Vince, you're introducing the next item.
Yes, I am. Good morning. We're just...
Hold on one second, Vince.
Excuse me, Vince. President Carter, I need to recuse myself
Okay.
from this topic. My sister-in-law works at ZGF, and I have an interest in an action that affects ZGF, so I'm declaring an actual conflict of interest, and I will not participate in the discussion or the vote.
Okay.
Okay.
So noted.
Okay.
Go ahead.
Very good. Thank you. As Curtis said, we're just really excited to be at this point today. We've been at this for a long time, since 2014 is when we really got started on this program. These things take a long time, certainly when you're talking about this order of magnitude on a project. And there's been a lot of really good work from certainly the port team, but ZGF as well, to reach this point. And so I'm going to just give you a little bit of a quick history on the project, and then we'll turn it over to George. We're here to get an amendment to ZGF's contract to continue the design of the terminal core and then get an exemption from competitive bidding for the CMGC. So there we go. As you know, the terminal core is part of the PDX Next program. There are 5 big projects that are going on right now. Terminal balancing, we're moving forward on that. Construction's already getting started out there. The quick turnaround area, which is under construction, will be open here in February or March. And then we're still working on a design build for the parking addition, the Packer project, as we call it. We're about 30% design on that. Really, the biggest project of all of these is the terminal core and the concourse A and B remodel. Right now, we're calling that project $950 million for phase 1. As we've been talking to the airlines about that, if you remember, the original program was designed around about 1.3, even almost up to 1.4 billion. And we've decided to phase it into 2 pieces, which really aligns with how we were going to do the construction anyway. And I'll get into that a little bit more. the goal around the the terminal core is really to get us capacity out into out into the future, out into the 2035 range. Assets that we have not really put a lot of energy into here in the last decade or so, and then certainly the seismic resiliency. And on the capacity side, the most important choke point that we really have today is on the security checkpoints. There just really isn't any additional space to accommodate that. So we're going to, in this first phase, identify and fix that part of our capacity issue while we still address the rest of the areas in the second phase of the project. I think we've shown you this chart before, that the main the main terminal building is actually about 7 different buildings, and so we're going to be getting into the oldest part of the building here, the 1956 construction, all under different seismic codes, and so it's really time to figure out how to accommodate our resilience, and we came to the conclusion that the best opportunity to do that was actually to build further out into the west. If you look at the terminal core, this really came out of the master plan. We finished Airport Futures, if you recall, in 2010, 2011. And the first one of the follow-on studies was knowing that we were going to need to address the main terminal building. So in 2014, we brought you the terminal area master plan that showed a potential future, but it was just in the existing footprint of the building back then. And as we continued on down the road with that, we realized that we just were not going to have enough capacity and to be able to accommodate the growth and then also deal with seismic and all of the upgrades that were going to have to take place in that main building would not really, we would not get much for our dollars that we were going to have to invest. So we decided to go down this path of a much more a bigger expansion, really, to create the Western expansion, and that's kind of getting us to what we did today. We got airline approval for $17 million to get us to a 10% design, and what we came up with was this. And just for orientation, I'd say the existing building is really kind of on this line right here, and this is the existing. This is a 150-foot expansion out into the west. This calls for an elimination. Currently, there's a gate C2 and gate D2. Those will be eliminated permanently. We would take C4 and D4 out temporarily while we're constructing it. But it was really the only way to accommodate the capacity and still achieve some of the seismic and getting a seismically resilient facility was to go out into the west. So this got us to our 10% design. We've been somewhat pencils down while we've continued our conversations with the airlines. And we've been out visiting many of them over the summer and certainly been working with them closely. I would say really at the end of the day, I think the $1.3, $1.4 billion number was just, I'd say, a little bit too big for them to get their heads wrapped around at the end of the day. And so, and a fair point was that, the biggest issue is your checkpoints. And so let's go out here, we'll build the extension out into the alley, as we call it. And we will still remodel concourse A and B, which will get us one more gate. We'll be adding gate B4, which doesn't exist today. And that'll be the first phase of the project. And we agreed to that phasing. That's $950 million. We're required to submit a ballot to the airlines, and we did that in late October. And they have 30 days to disapprove it, and that was approved unanimously. Nobody sent in any negative votes. So for us, that was a good outcome, that there was no disagreement with the program. We will be designing the project all at once. So the assumption is, with our good friends at ZGF, that we're going to design the entire program as it existed. And with construction, we'll be working with the airlines on the phasing of the construction. In our mind, we'll have a full design of the project. We'll start with the 950. We'll construct these pieces, but I would expect over the next couple of years, we'll be just talking to them about continuing on and finishing off the next piece and getting their approval for that. And again, that would be somewhere in the neighborhood of $300 to $400 million for phase 2 that gets us into the main terminal building. One of the other really important pieces here is to deal with concourses A and B. A is, for those of you who have flown down there, it's our least, I'd say, quality of service and passenger experience down there. There is way too much service down there in that facility, given the size of it and the age of it. We've not been investing in it, so it does need to come down. We are going to plan on tear down Concourse A. We will repave it and use it for what's called Remain Overnight, or RON parking for aircraft, which we're short of today. But we still know that we need some level of ground loading. There will always be some amount of that here at PDX. And so we're looking to do remodeling here in Concourse B, and perhaps out here into the walkway that gets you out into Concourse A. There is an opportunity to still have some level of hold room out there. And we're working with Alaska Airlines on that around their fleet mix, what their timing is. They plan on phasing out the Q400 propeller planes and moving to more of the E175 jets. And so, today they have, I believe, 14 parking positions out there. They probably don't need that many, but they're not exactly sure when that is. So that is also part of this project. Concourse B was originally built with 4 loading bridges. We took one out years ago. We're going to put one back. That'll create another loading bridge operation opportunity for Alaska. So that's part of this project as well. One of the big parts for the airlines is obviously the cost of operating here at PDX. It's something that we manage very closely. It does influence decisions when it comes to service and new air service. And so this chart does not go, this is from 2017 forward, but if you were to go backwards to 2004, this metric is CPE, which is the cost per in-plane passenger. It's a metric that many airports use. And we're at the around $10 range. We've been at $10 since 2004. And that's a combination, we believe, of managing our debt, refinancing those bond opportunities when they present themselves. Certainly the growth in enplanements has helped, but we're also managing our operating costs as well. A $950 million project is a lot of money. We're borrowing most of that. $150 million will be from passenger facility charges. This is on the tickets that folks use or pay for as they fly out of Portland. The rest of it is through bonds, and so we're borrowing all of this money. We'll do it over various points in time, as only when we need it. So the airlines are obviously very concerned about, well, what is this doing to my cost? So as we've done our forecasts out here, and it will gradually come online, the debt will, but you get out here to 2023 when the facility opens, and that's when the debt service starts to hit them. And so it goes up significantly. There's a lot of things that influence cost per in-plane passenger, interest rates in the market, operating expenses, how quickly are enplanements growing. So we gave them a range of where we expect them to be. So if you look at a 2.3% enplanement growth, which is what we have done here since 2000. Lots of ups and downs from the recession, 9/11, and so on, but overall, and it's our general forecast going forward in the master plan is 2.3%. Last few years, we've been doing 6, 7, 8, and 9. So in a conservative way, if we stick to a 2.3% over the next 5 to 7 years, interest rates are at 4 or say at the upper limit of say 5%, then you're going to we could end up at a cost per in-plane passenger up here at $20. So we'll be doubling our cost. If on the other hand, enplanements grow a little bit faster, rates stay down in the 4% range, we could be in the $16 to $17 range. So we wanted to give them some idea of the cost structure that it will be focused on going forward. They're very focused on this. In the couple of the emails that I got, we're supporting your project, now bring it in on time and under budget is their direction. And so this is what we'll be managing to here over the next few years as we manage operating expenses and certainly the financials of it. So it's a big change for us going from 10 to 20. I'd like to think that we've kind of kept our powder dry to get to this point. It's a big project, but I'm very confident in our ability to certainly meet, and frequently we exceed these numbers going forward. So today I'm going to, now that's it for me. I was going to turn it over to George to talk about the specific contracting requests that we've got today.
Okay, thanks, Vince. So today we're asking for two actions. The first, to approve a contract amendment for ZGF to take us through schematic design and initial design service for about $34 million, and then request an exemption from competitive bidding to utilize an RFP process to select a contractor for the project. So as Vince said, we've been working through this for a number of years already. We've completed phase 1 and phase 2, which was the concept selection phase and the conceptual design phase. They got us from evaluating the existing building, growth opportunities within the confines of the existing building, to the western expansion process. And then we've now taken that in phase 2, the conceptual design phase, and taken design to about 10%, which then defines the project scope, budget, schedule, and some of the engineering details around that to get us to about the 10% design and the budget where we are today. We'll now kick off phase 3, the design development. During this phase, we will continue to define the design, and about the next year, we'll get to about 30% design through schematic design. During that period, we'll select a contractor to construct the project. We'll also have a significant overlap between design and construction. That's one of the advantages of the CMGC approach, that we can start construction long before the design is complete. Sometime mid next year, the end of next year, we anticipate setting a negotiated construction price and being back for commission before we kick off construction. So Vince went through a lot of the scope of work. Our plan here really is to address our most pressing issues first. So with constructing the western expansion, we'll be improving the seismic resiliency of our terminal building. We'll be increasing the capacity and the flexibility of security checkpoints. One of our goals with the project is to allow ourselves to be flexible for future changes in ticketing, in security, and in passenger processing, so we can build the space so it's adjustable as times changes. We'll also have an increase in the environmental efficiency of our space, and then with removing A and growing B, we'll increase our world-class customer service we've been getting to date. Take a step to the exemption as defined in the findings. The exemption will demonstrate substantial cost savings and will not impact the efficiency of the operation, and we anticipate having a lot of competition from the contracting community on this. So one of the keys from our perspective and why we want to have an alternative contracting is because of the difficulties in this construction. You can imagine the safety issues and the phasing issues with trying to maintain an operation, maintain passenger throughput while erecting a new roof over the existing building, as well as from the maps you could see the concourse impacts at the end of the western expansion. This approach will also allow us to increase our small business opportunity and also show a significant increase in the diversity and the social equity aspects of the project. By working with the CMs early in the process, we can get them involved with the community and the port community. Overall schedule, we've been commissioned in both 15 and 16 for the ZGF contract amendments, as well as the Turner pre-construction support services. We anticipate with this approval, kicking off the schematic design and final design should take us through the end of 2021. We'll be back to commission April timeframe for the selection of the CMGC, and then towards the end of 2018 for an additional amendment with ZGF for the remainder of the design services, and then back in 2019 as well for the establishment of the construction price. Right now, we're anticipating constructing the western expansion beginning the end of 2019, early 2020. We may have some earlier construction with Concourse B. We're still working through all of those details. The phase 2 process, assuming we can get approval with the airlines over the next couple of years, we'll just work through phase 1 and in fact overlap a little bit of the construction of the western expansion. We anticipate western expansion opening up mid-2023. We're requesting approval today of ZGF's contract amendment for about $34 million. Now, I want to point out that this is not all ZGF. They have about 23 sub-consultants that are working with them, including, I think, 12 that are small business enterprises. Overall project is $950 million if the airline's approved. If the total project is approved over the next couple of years, it'll be about $1.4 billion. Contingency is about 23%, which is really relatively tight for this period of time on the project. We've only completed about 10% design, and it's a pretty significant renovation of the terminal building, so there's a lot of risk associated with that. And as Vince said, the plan is to design the entire project, so that's why if you look at the consultant services cost as a percentage of construction in phase 1, it's higher than normal, but that's because we're designing the whole project. Staff requests approval of the executive director's recommendations. Any questions? I'm sure there are.
Well, so we'll take these separately. So
Yes.
the first will be the approval of the personal services contract. And are there questions, comments from the commissioners? I'd like to just make a comment. It's not really a question, and I know it's our earlier speakers, I think, have all left. I don't think any of them are still here, but one of the points that they raised that I know rings true with all of us is the importance in these contracts of how our work is done to engage the community and certainly the impacted community on these projects. And these happen to be collectively the Harbor Fund or Superfund site and this terminal core project, huge money commitments. And they are also terrific opportunities for us to have an impact on how contract work is done and by whom. And I think that your group, George and Vince, have done a great job. I mean, getting the approval of the airlines to take on this project, and also along with Stephen Nakana, including this equity piece that's part of each of these contracts. And I think on behalf of the whole commission, this continues to be a very important aspect of approving this work. We're not engineers, but we do have a concern about how our work and our contracting affects the community. So I see it as a great opportunity. I want to make sure that we take advantage of all aspects of that opportunity. And so I finished with my speech there. But it's interesting how these have sort of coalesced in this meeting today. And so as we move forward, this is a 5-10 year project on both of these. And important that we keep all of that in mind, I think. So with that, either other comments or?
Yeah, would offer a comment as well. I commend you. I also think that there is almost what I would call secondary capital associated with being able to aggressively promote this business. All of the airlines have got the same challenges in looking at how they engage community, how they use concepts of diversity and equity, and to have a partner who can be viewed as the best practice in all of their work around the country and working with airports, I think further distinguishes us. So I would join President Carter in encouraging you to do all that we can to stay focused on our mission and to invite those fellow travelers who are looking to support the same gains.
So is there motion and second to approve the recommendation?
So moved.
Second?
Second.
Okay. All those in favor on the personal services contract, it's item number 1.
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? So that motion carries. And now we with regard to item number 2, the exemption from public bidding, stated in findings in support of an exemption, which is item number 2, the port held a public hearing on the draft findings on October 2nd, 2017, providing the public an opportunity to comment on the draft findings in support of that exemption request. And I now ask if there are any further questions or comments on the findings or requested exemption as a public matter. And hearing none, the commissioners, the commission board will be in recess briefly, and the Port of Portland Contract Review Board, which is us, will be now called to order. So I need a motion and second for approval of the findings in support of an exemption and approval to exempt from competitive bidding the public improvement contract for the Terminal Core Redevelopment Project.
So moved.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, that motion carries as well. I will adjourn the Port of Portland Contract Review Board and call the commission back to order. And just one other comment. I know in this process and George's work in the early design work and up to date, I've been pretty regularly involved. Alice Kupel-Comas has been consistently involved, and I think it's been important and will continue to be important that the commission itself stays engaged on an active basis in this project in particular. And with that, we've approved the requested recommendation.
Thank you.
And Vince, you've got the final item.
I do.
Chairman, if I may, on this final item, I would like to announce that as business manager and financial secretary of IBW Local 48, I have an interest in any action that affects the port's maintenance group. Therefore, I am declaring a actual conflict of interest, and I will not participate in any discussion or vote.
Okay. Thank you, Gary. So noted.
Okay, so we're here this morning now. I'm here with Blaze Lamphere from our HR department to request your approval of a 5-year collective bargaining agreement with the District Council of Trade Unions that covers about 90 employees at PDX Maintenance. This contract expired in June of this year. We've been negotiating since before then, and it's taken us a while to get to this point. It has not been formally approved yet. This is a little different for us. We have a tentative agreement that we reached late Thursday night of last week, and the members are voting today. So your approval is contingent on the members ratifying it themselves. We decided that we did not want to wait another month to execute all the elements of the contract. So we are here a little bit earlier than what would normally be our standard practice. So they're voting today, and again, we're hopeful that the members will ratify it. I'd say the biggest sticking point on the negotiations has been around healthcare, and the PDX Maintenance Group is the last of the port groups to move to the high deductible plan. The administrative folks, we moved in this direction about 3 years ago, and we've been negotiating this element into all of our represented groups across the organization. Since then, we're still working with the fire department, but we're this close to being done with that group as well. And we've done any number of different things within each group to deal with the challenges that have come with changes in healthcare. We realize it's a very personal decision for folks, impacts everybody very differently. So we've tried to create alternatives and options for folks. That we still have a Kaiser HMO option for folks. We are also, if they're going to a high deductible healthcare plan, we do contribute to their health savings account or an HSA on an annual basis to help offset some of the impacts of moving to the high deductible plan. But again, we moved to this as an organization 3 years ago to help manage our health and benefit and our total compensation impacts. As you know, we've been dealing with PERS and the impact on that. We do not have a lot of control over the PERS impacts to us. We're trying to pay market competitive wages. The one that we actually had the most control over was the healthcare, and this is why we've moved to this higher deductible plan. So that has really been the biggest issue, and it's been that way on all of our represented groups as we've done it. And like I said, the PDX maintenance was the last one that we ended up bargaining with, and we're pleased that we got to a tentative agreement with them last week. And then, without taking any more of Blaze's thunder, I'll let him finish the conversation about what the details are in the contract.
We're excited about the reaching the tentative agreement and the 5-year deal with this group. The DCTU is the District Council of Trade Unions, is composed of both IBW, the electricians, Local 48, and laborers, LIUNA 483. We've had contracts with these groups for decades for PDX maintenance. It is our biggest group as far as number of individuals under contract. As Vince mentioned, about 90 individuals. And actually, if we count the vacancies, it's closer to 97, 98 full-time equivalents. The economic drivers that we consider in these negotiations, as we do in all, the CPIW, we've been relying on Portland-Salem's second half for a number of years. All of our contracts moved to that, and this year we were told by the Department of Labor, Bureau of Labor Statistics out of San Francisco, that index is no longer going to exist. The last time it is being reported is actually January 12th. So we do get one last time of the report of that index. They are also doing that with a number of other areas around the country. And when I asked why, staff there told me we're not growing as quickly as they'd like to justify that. I guess they're not on the highways or freeways, and anywhere between 12 noon and 7 at night. But seriously, this is an index we've relied on a long time, so we had to consider what other indices are we going to look at. We're coming off a first half that was topped 4 over the first time in a decade. So in looking at this, we looked at an index that's tracked very closely, has been West Class A cities. Those are cities or metro areas in 13 western states, including Portland, where the metro area is 1.5 million or above. So that is an index we're looking at closely and have incorporated as part of this tentative agreement. As most of you know, the PDX Airport relies heavily on the presence and engagement of its dozens of electricians in particular. And we needed in this agreement to make market adjustments to continue to attract and retain these important tradespeople. Unlike some of our represented positions here at the port is undoubtedly in competition with both the private sector and the public sector for these individuals. BOLI's established prevailing wage rate for electricians continues to rise. That's topped $40 this year, plus about $19 in fringe benefits. So we witness a sharp continued demand for these individuals. We also, as we always do, continue to look at internal equity. Vince has indicated that this is the final group that's moving to our healthcare plans. Fire will be going to a trust, and so then everyone will have moved from what they were on unless they retained an existing trust. The wages for this group, 3.5% retro. They're in 17, back to 7/1/17. And we have 2 mid-year increases for the electrical job classifications, including a position called the lighting maintenance technician here that needs to be brought into line with the market. And those are in January of 2018 and 20. CPIW Portland-Salem second half, an increase in 7/1/2018 will be based on the number we receive on January 12th. And after that, we'll be following the CPIW, as I mentioned, Class A index for second half in the years to come of this 5-year agreement. Health and welfare, we mentioned the switch. The core contributions for those first 3 years mirror what we've had in previous years, and as we did with marine maintenance, the fourth year maintains the third year of contributions rates for groups that have switched to the high deductible health plan. Unique to this particular agreement, the safety incentive is a $500 payment to all regular full-time employees in a paid status each fiscal year that the port meets its safety metric. The port has not met its safety metric in past years, but it continues to be a strategic goal and an area of strategic focus for the port. As you heard Stan talk about safety earlier, it is also one of the factors used in port share, so something that is subject to audit as we look forward to this particular new incentive with this group. Vacation changes and holiday changes, effectively, to be brief about this, puts this particular group in line with other negotiated groups. The vacation changes put them in line with marine maintenance, landscape gardeners, marine security, and others. The holidays, we look at a combination of both holidays and personal leave days and add those together to compare across groups within the port. It puts them in line with marine maintenance, marine security, and landscape gardeners by adding this additional personal leave day. They have less holidays than some of the other groups, more personal leave days, but the emphasis here has been more flexibility in their options. Critical illness and accident plan, this has been offered to other groups here that have agreed to the changes in healthcare. Police, marine security, marine maintenance all have this base plan with an option to buy up for additional coverage for the employee and family members at the employee's expense. We have a lump sum for those LIUNA employees who are not getting those increases, mid-year increases, as a signing bonus, if you will, and consistent with what we did with marine maintenance for the move to healthcare, a $750 lump sum payment. Shift differentials, changes in here are consistent with what we did with marine maintenance as well. There are some other miscellaneous changes we have made in shoe allowance, et cetera, that are explained further in the document that you have, the agenda item. The estimated financial impact in new monies, the total increase being almost $7.3 million, an average approximately of $4,828 per employee. The base we looked at was 97 employees over the 5-year period, and you'll see that incremental amount of the $2.3 million divided by 97 divided by 5 gives you the average of approximately per year per employee. This average slightly higher but consistent with other groups we've had in the 4,000, 4,500 range in recent contracts that we have agreed to. So the staff recommendation is for tentative approval, subject to the vote, which is actually going on now, of the employees. The executive director's recommendation to enter into a collective bargaining agreement with the District Council of Trade Unions.
Questions or comments?
I have a comment. I appreciate how hard the staff has worked with respect to the health benefits, given that it's a national issue that all employers face on how expensive it is. And I just ask that you continue to look for ways to decrease the cost both to the port and to the employees as you go forward in looking at health benefits.
Thank you.
So thanks for all the work. I think, and as it's written up there as a recommendation, the contingency is we haven't agreed to anything unless it's approved by the union vote that's occurring now.
Correct.
Okay. Is there a motion and second to approve the recommendation?
So move.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? The motion carries. Thank you for the work you've done.
Thank you.
And I think that concludes the agenda. So the meeting is adjourned.
with 7.
With